Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Discriminating Gamer. Say, have you heard about this new trend on social media where you hide a breath mint underneath your tie clip and use it right before you kiss goodnight? It's a TikTok tie tack tic tac tactic. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Prime Minister from GMT Games.
We'll get back to the review in just a moment. I want to take a minute to ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about history, books on history, military history. I even post some of my lectures for my classes on there. Please check that out. Please subscribe to that channel. And now, back to the review.
In Prime Minister from GMT Games, 1 to 4 players take on the roles of various Victorian British politicians as they attempt to rise to the level of Prime Minister and score the most victory points. Now, of course, there's different ways you can play this game depending on the player count, but of course you always have two political parties, the Conservatives and the Liberals. Now, depending on the player count, as I say, you may have 2 players playing as Conservatives and 2 players playing as Liberals, but this is not a team game. Everybody is in it for themselves. Now, at the beginning of the game, each player will be dealt out a politician card. And the politician card will determine the party affiliation, and it will also have a number in the corner. Now, quickly, if ever you deal out more than 2 in a 4-player game, more than 2 of the same party, 1 player is just going to keep drawing until they get the appropriate party. So it's balanced. You got 2 for each party. Then whoever has the lowest number on their politician card, they will be the first prime minister. Now, the other member of that party will become the government backbencher. And then of the 2 opposing parties, whoever has the lowest number will become the opposition leader. The other player will become the opposition backbencher. Now, the government backbencher will have a number of cards that are face down. They're not active, but these are different party positions within the government. And as certain conditions on the board open up, they will then gain access to those abilities, and they will be able, provided it's kind of a natural politician's ability, they will be able to engage with that card. Now, each politician also is going to have a number of specific actions. There are a total of 5 different actions. Each politician will have 4 of those, so they'll always be missing one of the specific actions. More on the actions later. So players are going to go ahead, they're going to set up their specific player board, and they're going to place a marker on their standing. It says on each player board kind of where your standing begins, so you place your marker there. And your standing is, of course, your prestige, what other people think about you. You're also going to place a marker for each player on the kind of Queen's favor track, and that's how much Queen Victoria likes and respects you. Now, you're going to have different party bills. You're going to have kind of cross-party bills that both sides theoretically could favor. Then you're going to have party bills, conservative party bills, and liberal party bills. You're going to shuffle those, put those off to the side. You're also going to have supporter cards that you put off to the side. There will also be uncertainty cards, which you will shuffle and also put off to the side. The game board itself has different areas that show different ideas and concepts of the game. For instance, you have 8 sections. These are, of course, conservative and liberal. You've got the middle class, you've got the workers, you've got Ireland, you've got different places and constituencies throughout the British Isles. And you have a tracker for both the conservatives on one side and the liberals on the other side. You've got spots where they begin. This actually sets the stage for potentially how many votes in Congress you will win. Now, you'll count up the differences of all of those various tracks, and then kind of on the projected elections board, you will mark how many. So if you're the conservatives and you're up 5, you'll be in the 5 spot, and it will tell you then how many seats you are expected to take and how many the opposition is expected to take. You only track who's ever in charge. So if ever the conservatives were to go down, the liberals would go up. You simply swap out the marker and put the liberal marker there so you know that they're the ones that are up. Now, you also have a spot on the board for the current constitution of the party. It'll have a space for the total number of seats that that party controls. You will have a number of seats that the moderates in that party control, and you will have a number of seats that the partisans in that party control. So there's going to be a balancing act, not just between parties, but even within the party in power. Now, when the game setups in the standard game, you actually start with something called the Pact. This more or less represents perhaps a kind of coalition government where the conservatives and liberals are working together. Now, this is ahistorical. You actually didn't have that in Victorian England, as I understand it. But nevertheless, that's the way you start the game, meaning you're going to share for the first couple of rounds victory points. Everybody's going to win victory points. The very first thing you do on a turn is you would award the government 4 victory points and the opposition 2 victory points just for staying in the game. But while you're part of the pact, that will be 6 victory points that everyone will share. Now, the next thing you're going to do is each player will take a number of cubes. Now, usually the backbenchers will take 1, maybe 2 cubes. Opposition leader, maybe 2. The prime minister can take 3, possibly 4 cubes. He's going to have the most actions that he'll be able to do. Now, if there are no bills that are already on the board, you're going to have bill selection. Essentially, each of the 3 players who are not the prime minister are going to be able to draw a bill. And they can choose if they want to take a bill from their party or if they want to take a bill from the crossover that anybody can take. They can choose a bill that they think that they would like. They're going to take a number of bills. They can choose the ones they like. And then the prime minister himself will go ahead and he will choose three of these bills, and he will look at the bills themselves. But critically, if he ever selects a bill to be placed out there that belongs to a party, his party, he will break the pact. The pact will be gone immediately. So he's got to use some strategy here about when he wants to stay in the pact or when he wants to get out of the pact. There will be opportunities for the people who are out of power to break the pact as well. Now, once the prime minister has selected the bills that will be placed before the parliament, of course, there's a track that shows kind of how far they are, how they've been debated, and can add to the potential for them being accepted. But each bill is going to have some specific information on it. For instance, it will say who's going to vote for the bill. It might say all, meaning all of the government ministers will vote for that bill. It may say that only the moderates are going to vote for that bill, or only the partisans are going to vote for that bill. And then it will also have information about what happens when that bill gets passed. For instance, the prime minister's standing might go up. He might get a supporter card. He might be able to go up in certain constituencies and down in others. Now, also, if he accepts one of the cards from an opposition player, that opposition player actually gets a point for having their bill accepted by the prime minister. Next, we go to the player actions phase. Now, the government backbencher will go first. Then the opposition leader can decide who among the opposition players can go first, and then the other one will. And then finally, the prime minister goes. Now, there are different actions you can take in the game, and they're all listed on your politician card. Now, on your politician card, it may have a 1 or a 2. Now, the 1 means you just get a weaker ability. If you have a 2, that means you can do it essentially sometimes twice. You get a stronger ability there. The first thing you can do is campaign. Essentially, you can move your party up 1 slot in any of the constituencies. If you have a level 2 campaign, you can move up 2 slots in a constituency. You can debate. Essentially, what debating means is you can move up 10 votes or down 10 votes on any bill that you want. If you have the level 2, you can move up or down 20 votes on any of the bills that you want. You can flatter, meaning you're flattering the queen. You can move up on the queen's favor track, or with the number 2, you can move up to 2 on the queen's favor track, or move someone else down up to 2 on the queen's favor track. You can hobnob. Now, when you hobnob, essentially, you can take a supporter card. And supporter cards allow you to do actions you can hold on to, I think, a total of 2, but you can play them anytime on your turn, and they are free actions. They don't cost you a cube. You can just go ahead and play it. And these will do all sorts of things. They'll allow you to do some of these other actions essentially for free, like constituencies, like flatter, like move your standing up. There's all sorts of things that can happen with the politician cards. Now, if you have the level 2, you can draw 2 cards and choose which one you want to play. Now, you also have the influence. Now, influence is kind of a tricky thing. I think you need to be a level 2 to use it. And what influence does is it effectively allows you to move 10 seats, 10 ministers from the moderates to the partisans, or from the partisans to the moderates. So it allows you to kind of adjust that there. Now, the prime minister, before he takes his actions, he has to resolve an event card. He looks at the event card, and oftentimes there's choices. Now, he can sometimes choose to do nothing, in which case something bad will probably happen to him, or he can do maybe a moderate choice, which costs him maybe an action cube, or and then maybe just something slightly bad will happen, or maybe there may be an opportunity to do something good. If he spends 2 cubes, he can actually accomplish something on the board, but that's cutting into his regular actions. Now, once all of the actions have been taken, the PM has to resolve one of the bills. Now, if it's obvious he's not going to get the votes for one of the bills, he can just withdraw it, and there also are some penalties. If the bill fails, there are some penalties. But essentially, what you're going to do then is hopefully through the actions, you will have manipulated the board in such a way that you will have enough votes in your party to pass the bill. Now, you can always ask the opposition, will you help us pass the bill? And if they see it in their interest to do so, they will pass the bill. And in that case, it just gets passed. But otherwise, you're relying on those votes. And you hopefully you've manipulated your tracks and the debate, and hopefully you've gotten to a position where you've got enough votes. Now, if you're within, I think, 20 votes, meaning you need 330 votes to pass, I think if you're under 350 votes to pass, you have to draw an uncertainty card. And an uncertainty card will add or subtract votes from your track. You got people that join you in voting, or defectors. And so there's uncertainty. You're not sure what can happen there. And potentially you could fail a bill that way. If you withdraw a bill, there are consequences. And if a bill fails, there are even greater consequences, usually with a decline of standing. Now, after you've resolved bills, you have to hear challenges. If the person in your own party wants to challenge you, I think they resign their offices, the cards that they've gained, and they come at you. Or if the opposition leader wants to come at you, he can. Now, critically, if they want to topple a prime minister, you have to have greater standing than he has. Barring that, if you have the same standing but greater favor with the queen, you can topple him, in which case the player who now becomes prime minister, you swap your player aids, and you immediately gain the standing that's printed on the player aid. There also is a few other little effects that happen whenever that changes, particularly if it changes party. Now, I've got an election marker on the board. If there are no bills on the board, you have to choose to remove the election marker, meaning you will have to do an election next turn, or you can hold an election on that turn. Now, for an election, what you're doing is, again, you're looking at the projected results of the election, and then you're drawing an uncertainty card. You're seeing if there's any pluses or minuses that come out of the uncertainty card that determine whether or not the House will change hands. The House of Commons will change hands. Now, it is possible, if you draw one of these cards and the opposition nearly gets there, that they can become a minority government. Now, that happens if you draw the card and there is Queen Victoria on there and she has a certain number. If you can get greater to or equal than the number that she's printed on there, even if you don't get the majority, you can still form a government, provided you have enough favor with Queen Victoria. If that happens, you essentially control the government, even though you technically did not gain a majority. So players are going back and forth. They're selecting bills. They are resolving actions. They are passing or failing with the various bills. They are gaining standing. They are losing standing. They're gaining supporters. They are challenging the prime minister to take his place, and they are holding elections. Now, throughout all of this, players are gaining points. Frequently, they're gaining points with bills passed. Once the pact is broken, you've got the two parties with the different votes going on, with the different victory points going on there. Now, what you're trying to do is gain 100 victory points and be prime minister. If your party has 100 votes, but you are not prime minister, you need to hurry and get prime minister before the other person in your party does. But critically, whoever succeeds in getting 100 victory points while prime minister, that person wins. Prime minister. So this is a game that has been on my radar for a while now. I've seen this on P500 on GMT, and I thought it sounded just excellent. I thought it sounded like a lot of fun. And so I went ahead and I got this game, and I was down in Utah recently, and I was playing it with some friends. And I'll tell you right now, I played this game 4-player Played it a few times. I played it 4-player and I played it 2-player. Haven't played it solitaire. There's the clockwork rules. I haven't even really read through the solitaire stuff yet. But I played it 4-player and a few games 2-player. And there's scenarios in the back too, so you can do specific scenarios that are kind of based on historical stuff. So I played it down in Utah for the first time with my friends, and I'm reading through the book, and some of it seems really intuitive, and then some of it was just like, I don't get this, I don't understand it. And as we're playing it, I'm rereading rules, I'm trying to figure things out, and things became gradually more and more clear. But by the time we finished that game, it still wasn't there were still things that were not 100% clear on. And then I came back here home, and we played a few games with Ray, and things kind of began to click, and so I got the game. And first of all, this game is it kind of reminded me a little. The game it reminded me the most of was Pericles by Mark Herman, which is a GMT game, because in that game you had the Spartans and the Athenians, and you had 2 players were Spartans, 2 players were Athenians, and they represented different classes, and but only one of them could win. So you kind of there was this odd tension between cooperation and just out competition. And in the 4-player game with Prime Minister, which is where the game shines, I'll tell you that right now. That's what's going on. There's that tension between cooperation and competition between the party members, because the party members have to work together to get stuff done, to get victory points, to stay ahead of the other party. At the same time, they're very wary of each other, because you never know when they're going to try to attempt to move on you. Because so you're always, you're a backbencher. You're always trying to get your standing up. You're always trying to get your standing up because you want to go after the prime minister. If you're the opposition leader, you want to get your standing up. You want to get your standing up. You want to go after the prime minister. And there's so many great choices here, and so many great things. And I love the event cards when you're prime minister that you've got to resolve, because some of them are like, there's like a strike, or the farmers have got problems. And then there's some things like you wore the wrong tie. So just some really quirky Victorian things that are going on here, alongside some really, really important things. As I say, the game I really think does shine as the 4-player, but the 2-player was still remarkably a lot of fun. It's fun when you're the prime minister and you're trying to make the math work. And it's funny, as much as big a part of this game as the numbers are and the math is, the game never feels overly mathy, because it always feels like it's a means to an end rather than the end of the sum end in and of itself. There's so many games with math where it feels like I'm just doing math, and here I don't know, the theme just sucks you in, and you feel like you're trying to convince people to vote for your bills, and you're trying to make sure other people are not screwing you over too much. And it's great because this idea of balance. Now, I talked about the balance between the players and the party and that. But what's so much fun too is the balance when you're prime minister and you're trying to balance the game. You're trying to balance the partisans and the moderates, and trying to make that work for you. That's such an interesting and fun part of the game. I really enjoy that quite a bit. The game succeeds on so many levels. Again, I say this. I got to tell you something. I'm fearing coming up with my best of 2023, because there's so many great games I'm looking at for game of the year, and this is a contender. This is a contender for game of the year for me. It is so good. I'm just I'm so drawn to this game, and it's a pity because I'm still trying to really develop a good game group here in Nampa, Idaho. I've got Ray, and once in a while we can get someone else to join us. Kim, my girlfriend, will join us sometimes. But I would love to get a solid game group together and just play this game, consistently, because it is so good. Next time I head down to Utah, I'll probably take it with me and play it again, because I freaking love this game. Again, I'll say it, if I could describe this game in a word, it's balance. It's just a balancing act all around, and it's so well. Somebody said to me, I mentioned this game, Prime Minister. I think maybe it was Ray, and he says, "Oh, is that kind of a compliment to Mr. President, which came out?" And I was like, "Well, no, it's quite a bit different. This is a historical game, and it's very different. It's not you can play it solitaire, but it's not a solitaire game. I may try the solitaire system at some point. That might be interesting. I think my guess is it would lose something of the theme in solitaire, maybe not, but I really, really like playing the game and trying to get those votes to line up when I'm the prime minister, and trying to get those votes to line up, and knowing someone is trying to screw me, or maybe they kind of want the same thing I want, because I may want to pass a bill that I think is gonna benefit me, but they can see merit in helping me with it or not opposing me too much in it. And then when I'm the opposition, it's fun. How can I throw monkey wrenches in this? What can I do to screw them over? It's so good, and there's just nuance and subtlety and juiciness here. Anyway, I am rambling. I love Prime Minister. One, like I say, contender for Game of the Year. I think you will absolutely love it, particularly if you can play it with other people. Maybe if I do play the solitaire at some point in the future, maybe I'll come back and discuss that a little bit in another video. But as it is, really love this game. Shines as 4-player, but it's a lot of fun 2-player as well. Recommendation for the discriminating gamer for Prime Minister is buy it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us here on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We'd ask you to please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter. And I'd ask you to check out my other channel, that is Cody Carlson, PhD, where we talk about military history, books on history, fun things like that. I even post some of my lectures on that channel. So please check out that channel and subscribe to that channel. It would mean a lot to me. We'd also ask you to please leave a thumb to this video on Board Game Geek. And if you are a big fan of the channel, you like the content we bring you here, I'd ask you to humbly click on the Super Thanks button and leave a contribution. I recently went to the airport and disguised myself as luggage. I got carried away.
One Japanese reserve must go to the Southwest Pacific Theater, down to Papua New Guinea.
Ooh, good shot.